Cyberpunk 2077 is built off of the tabletop sourcebooks, and today I got to sit down and talk with Jay Gray, the line manager for the Cyberpunk series. Okay, and I don't know if Rob told you, but I am new to Cyberpunk. I recently finished the game, and then I started watching YouTube videos as YouTubers do. And then I ran into the whole, Johnny Silverhand thing with Never Fade Away and Black Dog. And that was like the descent of my journey into my newest obsession. And now I am absolutely obsessed with these books and the world that they've created. I'm really blown away by just how, and obviously there's years and years being built upon, but I am so in love with this world that I have been reading in all of these books. And obviously the game connects to that, but I'm really blown away. What you guys are doing over there it's really interesting. And I've never experienced anything kind of like that. A lot of the games that I've played always have kind of expanded media that was established maybe during or after development and aren't built on something Cyberpunk has what, 35 years?
Not straight. It's 35-ish years old. There was large periods of time with in the late 90s and in the 2000s where nothing was released. So it's there's a body of work that is 20, 30 books long, hundreds and hundreds of pages to be certain, that came out before the video game came out. So and you're right. I've seen enough of your channel to know you're big into the BioWares, into the Mass Effects and the Dragon Ages, and Dragon Age and Mass Effect both. It was a video game, and then media came out afterwards, tied in. They tried really hard to create a pan media plan with novels and comics and movies, but Cyberpunk comes from the TTRPG first, and to my knowledge, there's nothing that does it quite like it. In terms of instead of basing it on, but instead making it all one universe, somewhat flexible universe in terms of what's true and what's not, because that's a Cyberpunk theme too, which what is truth, and is truth being controlled by, is it true? If the media says something is true, is it true? If enough people believe it, is it true? Sort of thing. And so that's deliberately built into the DNA of the whole world. But yeah, it's unique in that way, that the video game and the comics and the anime come from the TTRPG. And instead of saying, we were inspired by it, it says, nope, same world, same timeline, just further along.
And that was really, really fascinating to experience. And I'm on my second playthrough of the game right now, kind of with that in mind. And it totally reframes the game and kind of reframes a lot of your interactions and what you experience as V. It's really interesting in that theme, like you said, of the kind of the unreliable narrator. You don't realize how intrinsic that is to 2077 until you kind of go back on that second playthrough and really see how much, you've been told that may not be true. It's really awesome. And I'm reading right now Race Bartmoss's Guide to the Net. And that exact same thing. I'm loving reading all of Spider Murphy's little commentary, and is like, Race is probably lying here. It's so well done. I'm really fascinated with the world. You guys are doing a great job. It's so well done. And ever since I finished the game, I've been like, oh my God, has everybody read these? Have you guys seen all of these stories? Especially, Never Fade Away and Black Dog. It's just so cool. I saw that you guys have already met with CDPR, and I'm just so excited to see whatever happens, moving forward, because you guys are doing such an awesome job.
Thank you. Yeah, we started from the very beginning. CDPR came to, at that time it was just Mike and Lisa and Cody, the Pondsmiths family, at our Talsorian Games, and they said, we want to do a video game based on your thing. And it evolved from there. And, Mike insisted on being involved, and they insisted he be involved. So it worked out both ways. And, it helps that Mike worked at Microsoft during the early days of Xbox. So he was in charge of several projects there. And the video games later, he went to work on the Matrix MMO. And was the placeholder voice for Morpheus there, which was fun.
Oh, that's neat. I did not know that.
Yeah, eventually Lawrence Fishburne came and re-recorded the lines, but they needed someone to do the placeholder text. And they're like, we need someone who has a deep voice. Who do we know that's that? And so Mike came in and read it. There's that piece of art that you mentioned, you've retweeted, which is Mike in the chair holding and the sunglasses holding the red mini and the blue mini, is a sneaky jab at him for that.
Oh, that's awesome. That is a great piece of artwork.
It is. Sebastian Schmidt did it, and he is amazing. So yeah, and this is like I had a meeting with CDPR last week with Patrick Mills, and we went over things I can't talk about yet, but that's on the regular. It'll be little things like for Tales of the Forlorn Hope, Tales of the Red Forlorn Hope, which is a book we're working on, finishing up now. There were several pieces where we went to CDPR and we said, hey, if we go to this spot in the video game and we look around, we see these 5 buildings. Is it all right if we say that these 2 of those 5 buildings existed in 2045 and these other ones didn't? And they said, yeah, that's great. And it works the other way. Like they'll come to us and say, hey, we need to know the name of every made up fictional martial art that existed in your side of the timeline. And I'll go, okay, let me go and research it because I know we've made up a few, and I'll come back with the couple. There's Arasaka Te and Panzerfest, which are Arasaka's martial art, which they teach in malls, and the martial art made specifically for people who are full body conversions like Adam Smasher. So it goes both ways. There is a lot of back and forth collaboration when it comes to each side of the timeline and the respect we have for each other. So it's really cool that it is a shared universe, and that's just amazing. I remember, if I may diverge for a second.
Of course.
So around time Edgerunners came out, there was a music video, which you may or may not have seen, featuring a Netrunner retrieving information on a drug.
Yeah,
pharmaceutical.
That's actually by Ilya Kush. Oh gosh, I can't remember the artist's name, but I love their artwork. I think I've seen exactly what you're talking about. It's the animated story, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's sort of like a side story for Edgerunners done as a music video. And James Hutt, who is one of the designers at Artal and worked heavily on Cyberpunk, watched it, and he called me and said, Jay, they used my drug. Because it turns out the drug they used was introduced in the original Cyberpunk Red Jumpstart kit in one of the small missions that are included. We call them scream sheets. And that was one James wrote. And he was just so giddy at that small thing. And we were like, that is awesome. I remember when Phantom Liberty came out, small spoiler for Phantom Liberty, not a big one. And you're walking around and you see the bulldozers with the Zarafa logo on it. And that's something Cody Pondsmith made up for Cyberpunk Red. And it's neat to see those things. And I hope that on the other side, when the people at CDPR see things from 2077 or Edgerunners showing up in red, that they're excited to see it in our work too, just as excited as we are to see the things we create in theirs.
That's got to be so cool as a creator to not only be able to collaborate like that, but like you just said, to kind of see those things that other people have built and have them experience their creations in other medias. That's so cool. And obviously with this upcoming Edgerunners mission kit, this was a collaboration between 3. So this was Studio Trigger, and then Artel Saurian and CDPR, which how does that collaboration look like? I mean, do you guys have, obviously there's so much lore and stuff like that. How do you keep everything concise?
It's tough. There was a lot of back and forth. So first of all, I played the game 6,000 times, and that helps. I have many reference books, and I don't try to keep it all in my head. I try to keep enough in my head that I can go, oh yeah, I think that reminds me of something. I'll look it up. So that's a big thing. There are some behind the scenes repositories of information that are helpful, which I have access to, and we have access to. Mike and James and the rest of our TG team and I have access to. That's helpful. A lot of it is I write, or Mike writes. We write. We send it to CDPR. CDPR says, "This is good. This is good. This is wrong." We don't. Sometimes it comes down to we don't capitalize this word. And we'll say, okay, we'll change that. And sometimes it comes down to we call this thing that you called and read this, we call it this in 2077. For example, very small thing. In Cyberpunk Red, MaxTac is spelled capital M-A-C dash capital T-A-C. Well, actually, it's all capital letters with a dash inside. And then in 2077, it's M-A-C T-A-C, capital M, capital T, camel case. And there are two differences. And that difference is deliberate because in 2045, MaxTac is an independent organization run by Max Hammerman, who was a big police guy back in the 2020s. By 2077, MaxTac is a full part of the NCPD. And we have said that the reason for the difference is when NCPD decided to reopen its MaxTac branch, they didn't want to pay Hammerman royalties for the logo or the name, so they changed the spelling slightly in order to get around IP law. But small details like that is basically we rely on them, make sure we hit those details right, and yeah, it was a lot of back and forth, and it was a lot of this. Some things were easy. For example, the backgrounds on the Edgerunner characters was literally, "Can you write them for us?" And they said, "Yes, we can," and we did. The art was actually relatively easy because there are 7 pieces of art done by the director of Edgerunners. Because originally we said, okay, you're going to be playing new characters in this game. We need art for them. And can we do it? And they said, well, we want to make sure it's in the right style. And then they said, our Japan, CDPR came back to us and said, our Japan branch has talked to Studio Trigger and they'd like to do the art for you. And you're like, oh, well, that would be fine. Yeah. We did a little dance, celebration dance. And so some things came together easily, but a lot of it is just if you stay in regular contact and you talk regularly and you are open to change, the details flow. And it helps that for Edgerunners in 2077, the CDPR did such a good job of laying out the world in a video game, not just in the things you encounter as V, but in all those data shards that you can come across in the game and in the news broadcasts. There's a lot of information, and I have pages upon pages of notes to incorporate that.
That is honestly, it's amazing that you guys are able to do that because so many pieces of media these days feel like they get adaptations and maybe they're not true to the original content, or maybe they are its own thing entirely. So it's so cool to see such a collaboration the way that you guys are doing it. And yeah, I think that definitely shows in the games. It definitely shows in the books how intrinsic both are to each other. It's really cool. And like I said, I've never experienced anything like that before. When you guys are,
it's really fun. I will say the post-truth thing helps I talked about earlier, because if we say X and then later they say Y, in reality, both things are true from a certain point of view. Or more importantly, they're not necessarily not true. everybody knows that, for example, if you go into 2077 and you play through certain missions, you get to experience Never Fade Away, which is a story that's been in Cyberpunk from the very beginning, and it plays differently than it reads, and that is deliberate. Some of it is down to technical resources. There's only so much they could do in the video game, and in a role playing game, we have the unlimited budget of imagination. And in a video game, we have so many assets we can use. We have so much money we can spend on these assets. And so that's part of it. But part of it's deliberate because, as you said, Johnny's an unreliable narrator. Johnny's an unreliable narrator on a broken memory chip that has been in the hands of people who hate him for a very long time. So there's literally 3 points. And plus, it's all being filtered through V's consciousness and her memories, or his memories, their memories. So you have 4 points of possible change in that storyline for why it's different. And who's to say that our story is exactly right either? Because for all you know, that's a story being told at a bar by Johnny in 2020, 2021.
Yeah, I went back and after I finished. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I interrupted you, so I apologize for that.
Oh no, you're totally fine. Yeah, no, that is on. It's really fascinating that you guys do rely on that kind of unreliable narrator aspect, because when I did go back and read specifically Never Fade Away, I was like, wow, this is very different. I understand what these people are talking about, that I needed to read this story because it just reframes everything. And it's so interesting how there's so many stories in the game that feel like they connect, but again, have that different narration depending on who's telling the story. You never really know the truth. So it's such an interesting thing. And again, I don't really think I've experienced that much in any other media. So yeah, I can't wait to see what you guys, do moving forward. And I did have a question about that. And I obviously I'm not looking for spoilers or any type of reveal, but I just kind of want to ask, when you guys are, obviously you've already said that, or our Telsorian has already said that there will be stuff kind of in the 2077 era. Have you guys, the game came out a while ago. Obviously that game has its own decisions and outcomes and stuff like that. When you guys were in development, was kind of like the future of what everything would look like kind of already figured out, just because again, the story in the game is so reliant on your choices and kind of what V experiences. So just kind of wondering how does that look like? Is that a conversation of here's how we're going to handle our version of this, or something like that, kind of where you guys have already determined how you're going to handle how different 2077 may be depending on player experience, I guess. And again, if you can't answer that, that's okay, because I know that that's maybe a little bit too intrusive with revealing something, but if you can offer any insight, that would be very cool.
So, I can't fully answer that because part of it relies on, obviously they're working on another game in the Cyberpunk universe over at CDPR. That's not a secret. Project Orion's been announced. And obviously there is that question of, what if your V was a corpo? What if your V was a street kid? What if your V did this? What if your V did that? What if your V sided with this person over this person? And the thing to remember is that there are commonalities in the story, no matter what. V always is there at a certain point when a certain person dies. V always accomplishes certain things, and that's the important things. The rest, Patrick Mills over at CDPR has a very good perspective on this, where he says every story in Cyberpunk is not a historical document. It is a story being told by a guy at a bar. And so, he can tell that person, the guy at the bar can tell the story one way one day, and the next day he may tell it completely differently because, stories change over time. And as a result, you focus on that. Now, as that relates to our products, it's not something we've had to deal with so far. The Edgerunners mission kit specifically takes place after the anime. but before any major events within the video game. And as a result, for example, trying to think, gosh, I can't read all the spoilers. A character who may or may not be dead,
Oh,
depending on actions, is alive no matter what, and is mentioned as alive in the mission kit because that character has not come across the flux in the timeline where they may die or may not die depending on these actions. When we get to a bigger 2077 thing, we will take a look at it, and it may be that we choose a very specific point in time to tell the story from, so we have less to worry about, or it may be that we simply say, okay, if depending on how you want to play it, either this character or this character is in charge. It doesn't. In the end, that's up to you, and it's that's the difficulty of the unique difficulty of a choice-based video game universe, but it's not that different really from TTRPGs, where, for example, we ended the 2020 line with the Firestorm books, which was a long campaign where a lot of stuff happened. I'm not going to spoil it, but it is essentially, it ends with the major events that make 2077 possible. Specifically, this isn't a spoiler, everyone knows this, specifically with the nuclear device going off in Arasaka Towers. How that plays out is different depending on who plays it, because that scenario has been played thousands upon thousands of times by different RPG groups across the world. And as a result, people who went into playing 2077 may say, hey, this isn't how I remember it, because they don't remember the book and the book saying it's this way. They remember how their game was. But I think it's enough of it that they're like, oh, well, this isn't how I remembered it, but obviously Arasaka has said this, and Militech has said this, and the media is saying this. So even though I remember it differently, the reason it's being presented differently is because the megacorps control the narrative.
That's.
So it gets back to picking and choosing where you are in the timeline from the story you want to tell, which is something we'll have to do. And also, again, that post-truth narrative idea really gives us a lot of flexibility in how we do things.
That sounds like a perfect thing for you guys to continue doing with the unreliable narration. It really does add such an interesting perspective to all of the stories. And like I said, I've been reading, the Raish's Guide to the Net, and I'm reading it and I'm like, is that true? Because, what happens in 2077, because you said you played it 6,000 times. So you're very aware. So when I had played the game and then I read his guide, I was like, this is fascinating. I've been being absolutely blown away. And I'm like, wait, is he telling the truth here?
Well, yeah, something to remember. No one is their own villain. Johnny and Raish have this in common, is that Johnny and Raish see themselves both as their best hero and their best villain, I think, personally. I do some armchair psychology on them. They acknowledge that I think they acknowledge on some level that they're horrible people, but they're also the heroes of their own tales. Also, Raish thinks that aliens live in the internet. So you definitely have to take his words with a grain of salt, or 5 grains of salt. But yeah, and the further and further we get from something, the harder it is to remember exactly what happened, which is another, key element.
Yeah, he has some pretty interesting stories, and they're really funny. I think what's so great about, like you were just saying, they see themselves as their enemy, but also, they're kind of like their own hero type of thing. That's what's so great about all these characters. I've been loving reading everything about Alt and Spider Murphy, but also I've been going through like the Danger Gal dossier and kind of just learning about all these other characters within the world. And there's so much. I'm just kind of blown away by how much there is that we didn't really get to see in 2077. Because there's just so much, but it's so great. And you guys have done such a good job of, I feel the same feeling while reading, while playing, that there's something about this world and Night City that is like so fantastical and hopeful. Meanwhile, it's very hopeless and like very dreadful. Is that, I understand that that's part of the, the cyberpunk genre, but you guys have done such a good job kind of balancing that. How do you guys approach that? Is there like a conversation when you guys, you're writing these stories about the Forlorn Hope bar? Are those, is there, or do you guys kind of feel like you already have that theme so ingrained now that you don't have to make sure that it is intrinsic because it's already so intertwined?
It's actually the other way around. We have to be careful not to deviate. We have to really think about it, because it's very easy to genre jump, so to speak, where you get a little too hopeful or a little too depressed. So, and there's some tricks and balances. In a TTRPG, for example, one of the disadvantages you have, or advantages, depending on how you look at it, is differences from, say, a book or a movie, or a video game. Is there's no fixed endpoint specifically. People could be playing in a campaign for a couple of weeks. They could play a single session. They can play for years, and as a result, there's a pattern to cyberpunk media, which is often character gets involved with something, character does something, character succeeds but also loses at the same time, you know uh, uh, and or often in a ironic way where their own actions have caused their loss. Even if they succeed at their goal, they don't get to live to enjoy it, for example. um, and we have to be careful with that, because uh, no one wants to play a TTRPG where they're constantly losing. And also, losses are hard to come back from. It's hard to say, "Oh, I lost. If I lose every time, I'm gonna go play in D&D, because in D&D at least I can win sometimes." Um, which, by the way, if you want to play D&D, that's awesome. I hope you enjoy the game. But so there is that balance, and it's also, so we have to be aware of our medium. We also have to be aware that if you succeed too well, if you're doing the cool things, if you're if you're at the top of everything all the time, then you're not really playing in a cyberpunk world. You're in a cyberpunk world of people with money and power are the bad guys. I mean, there's a lot of bad guys, but they're the bad guys. They're almost always the bad guys. And if you're the one with money and power, does that mean you're the bad guy? And is that the game you want to play? With Forlorn Hope specifically, we wanted to tell a street level story, which means we didn't want it to be giant military grade hardware and power armor. We wanted to tell a story in which you got to change the fate of one small piece of Night City. That was the goal from the beginning. And we had to work really hard to make sure we never slipped beyond it. A lot of the action takes place in one very specific part of Night City. And you can make changes. By the time you're done, you'll have made two. If you do everything and you come out on, say, the winning side, you'll have made three major changes to Night City. But those major changes are minor in the grand scheme of things. You may change the fate of one gang that doesn't even exist in 2077, which shows you how long they lasted. You may slightly alter another gang that does exist in 2077, but it's all up to you. And in the end, what you did mattered to a couple of people, to a handful of people, but it didn't matter to the overall scheme of Night City. Mike likes to say, you can't save the world, you can only save yourself. We want to tell a story in Forlorn Hope where you can maybe save a little more than yourself, but it's never going to be much more than that. You change a small degree of fate, but you can't change the big fates. And that's just part of what Cyberpunk is. You're always fighting against the machine, and the machine probably is always going to win unless you want to reach a specific endpoint where you're transforming from Cyberpunk into something else.
Yeah, I think you guys are doing a good job of balancing that. And I especially feel that in Edgerunners. I think Edgerunners was like, it's so full of highs and lows that I was kind of it's a little bit of whiplash in an emotionally devastating way. But
Mhm.
they did a good job balancing that too. How did you guys, obviously you were approached to kind of make this mission kit, and I mean, how exciting was that being able to work with something that has already so established like this, and also something that fans really really liked. This anime was I mean, it's very well liked, and when I first started playing the games, that was one of the first things that everybody told me to do was like, "Yo, you need to go watch Edgerunners before you play." And I was like, "Oh, okay. I will do that."
Oh, so yeah, the way it worked was a few months before Edgerunners came out, CDPR screened it, the whole thing for our company. We sat down, we watched it, and at that point, Mike turned, and says, "Okay, we got to do something with this." We're like, "Cool, um, let's do it." We started working, and then when the anime came out, again, there was some question. It was like, we really liked it. We could see Cyberpunk fans liking it. Will it be a hit beyond that? Because there's always a question. Because sometimes things are very niche, and sometimes they're not. And it did gangbusters. It won Crunchyroll's like anime of the year, right? And it wasn't even on Crunchyroll, um, which just goes to show you how much people enjoyed it, and we were thrilled. And so we worked on this, um, and it was great. It was a different challenge. For example, you mentioned Danger Gal Dossier, which is a collection of over 100 NPCs and their stories and information about different factions. Um, and there was very little. There was a lot. There was basis. There was stuff that was built on other stuff. But for the most part, it was we can make whatever we want up. We can make these characters up. And with this, it was a question of, okay, we've got some stuff because we obviously have the rules because we already have Cyberpunk Red, but at the same time, we don't have other stuff. We have to tell stories. We have to tell. If you look at a map in 2045, uh, Haywood is in one place, and if you look at a map in 2077, Haywood is in another place. We had to tell the story of why Haywood moved. Um, why and some of this we built in already. We knew the answers. We just had to write them down. Uh, where did the neural port come from? Why in 2045 do people not? Why in 2077 does everyone have a phone in their head, but no one does in 2045, or very few people do? So those are stories we had to tell. And then we got to just work with it. We wrote the jacket, which is the adventure you play, and we said, okay, at first we wanted to do this, and we worked with this. Mike and I worked out some basics, and we took it to James Hutt, and James Hutt gave it a treatment, did an iteration of it, and it transformed into something else, which is really cool. And we wanted to tell a story. And we wanted to tell a story that had emotional resonance for people who were fans of the anime, but didn't feel like if I didn't watch the anime, I'm missing a lot. And so we got to tell this great story. And I think people really enjoy it. And that was an honor to do so because uh, when you see something that's amazing, and you're like, wow, that is fantastic. You don't want to, you see a really gorgeous house, right? You don't want to build an ugly porch onto it. You want to build a porch that goes with the house. And that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to build a porch that people would look at and go, wow, that porch goes perfectly with that house. And we worked really hard on it. Hopefully, we accomplished it. It was nerve wracking in some ways because we had a lot of guidelines. There was one point where we turned in a draft to CDPR, and CDPR said, "You can't use the character you've got this major character here. You can't use them for these reasons." They're like, "Okay, can we use this character instead?" They said, "Yeah, you can use that character." And it required a lot of rewriting, but it's better for it. So because of that collaboration, because we were able to stick to their vision of the anime and their vision of 2077 and what their side of the world looks like, while still being creative on our side, we got the best of both worlds. And I think it's really going to come through. Honestly, I think it's one of the best adventures we've written ever.
Oh wow, that's exciting. I can't wait to be able to actually have it because you guys have been teasing it. I'm very excited. I've actually been I just rewatched the anime last night, just to make sure that I was remembering everything. But I've seen it several times. It's very good, and I love the story. And obviously the characters are they're so unique, but they also feel so intrinsic to Night City. And for you specifically, did you have any characters that you really, I know you don't like choosing favorites, but do you have
Yeah.
any like characters that you really enjoyed writing, or like are you really interested in netrunners or mercenaries, or like a certain type of genre, I guess, for the character that you prefer?
When I have to do writing, it's a broad range. Because a lot of times what I'll do is I want the right character for the story. And for example, we do monthly DLCs. They're PDFs you can download with new stuff for your Cyberpunk Red game. I've written, I think, a third of them. And there's always a little bit of fiction or framing. There's a fictional character. There's an interview with a character. There's something to make it more than just rules or dry text. It's something to add to the world. So I always enjoy picking the character who works best for that and telling their story, no matter what it is. And I like switching it up. There's some characters that are more easier to write than others. I will say I wrote the text. We were just talking about the character in the jacket where I had to switch out a character. And I wrote the text for that character, and I really enjoyed it. And it was so much fun to write for this character because this character's voice is so unique and so interesting. And it was just fun. So there's no specific style of character or characters that I love to write, but I just love a character who inhabits the moment and has a personality that really comes through in the writing. Yeah, I mean that's really it. Making sure the character sounds like it, and if they have a strong personality and they tell their own story, they almost write themselves, honestly, because I can hear them talking in my head, and then I write that down. It's like if you are reading a book based on a television show or a movie you've watched, and you can, even though that a character in the show didn't say those words, you can hear it in their voice. It's very similar.
And do you think there's going to be any major surprises or things that people are going to be really, really shocked by that you've written in here? Any major reveal? Obviously, you can't reveal anything beforehand, but
I can't reveal it. Well, for people who are big into lore, there's a lot of juicy lore nuggets. There's going to be a lot of things in the Edgerunner's Handbook, which is what we call the lore book, which are fun. They are interesting. I'm really hoping we get a couple of lore videos from people out of it, because we get to tell a lot of story about the world, because we've told the story of the world from up to 2020, from 2020 to 2045. They've told there's some story about from 2077 on. There's not a lot there's not a lot between 2045 and the Unification War, which is the war between the new USA and the Free States. And so we really enjoyed telling that story, so you're going to learn a lot there. For the jacket, there are some great moments. There's going to be some moments where you go, oh my God. There is one moment which is fantastic, and you may never encounter it because it requires you to hit a very specific. It's like playing a game and a video game, and you only encounter this if you do this, this, and this specific scene. If you trigger certain flags, there is a scene in the jacket where if you don't trigger the flags, it won't happen unless the GM decides to, because that's the difference between us and a computer game. Unless the GM decides to mod the game, so it happens. But it's great. And there's just some really cool gears. And it's just, you're going to go to places, you're going to go, I know this place. I can see it exactly in my mind because I've been here before. And that's going to be fantastic. I don't know anyone's going to be super shocked, but I hope they're excited and delighted.
Well, I'm excited and I do plan on making some more videos. I'm very interested in learning about the characters, obviously Maine's crew and Lucy and David, and I can't wait to see what you guys have come up for them. And today the pre-order news dropped. Do you want to say what that is so that listeners, whichever, can pre-order it?
Well, first I'll give you a spoiler on the backgrounds, the Edgerunners. I'm gonna give you something that I haven't said before in an interview.
Yay.
Okay, let's see. I'm trying to figure out which one. There's so much information because everyone's covered. Everyone in Maine's crew is covered. I think I've said before that Dorio was a bodybuilder before she was an Edgerunner, so that's not new. I'll say Maine's name comes from where he was born.
Oh, that's interesting. There. So we are going to learn quite a bit about them then.
Yes, everybody has roughly half a page of text dedicated to their backgrounds. You will learn where they come from. Like a lot of people assume Falco is a nomad. Here's another one. Falco is not a nomad. So you'll learn quite a bit about Falco, Dorio, Maine, Pilar, Rebecca, Lucy, Kiwi, David. Learn more about David's background because you know the most about David and Lucy, and yet you really don't know much about them if you think about it.
Yeah,
you know, David lived with his mom, went to a school. That's it. You'll find out who his mom worked for. His mom actually worked for a very specific company. That's going to be some really cool information. But you asked about pre-order, so let me get to that. So yes, today we announced that we will start pre-orders on, I want to say the 3rd, Monday, June 3rd. And those will be pre-orders for the physical over on our website, and digital over at Drive-Thru and Roll20. So there'll be a straight digital package on Drive-Thru RPG, which is PDFs as well as JPEGs. And then over at Roll20 is a version which will work with the Roll20 virtual tabletop interface. And I can tell you what's going to be in the products if you want.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so if I remember it correctly, first of all, the physical one, you get the box. I like boxes. Boxes are cool. You get 3 booklets. The Edgerunner Handbook, which is a lore book. The rule book, which is both a rule book for playing what's in the box, as well as if you are already a Cyberpunk Red player, it is new 2077 stuff like weapons and quick hacks and economy rules. Basically, it's a simple set of rules for playing Cyberpunk Red in the 2070 era, as well as new weapons and new cyberware. And then there's the adventure, is its own booklet. On the back of every booklet is a cheat sheet. So, for example, on the back of one book, you'll have a cheat sheet of rules that you can reference. On the back of another, it's a cheat sheet for quick hacking. And on the back of the adventure, there is a flow chart that tells you how the adventure moves. There is dice. There'll be, I believe, 2d10s and 4d6s in Cyberpunk Edgerunner colors with the Edgerunner symbol as the 6 and the 10. There will be a series of maps for use with the jacket, the adventure. One of the maps is a map of Night City that you will probably want to frame and put on your wall because it's very gorgeous. And there is a token set, punch-out tokens, which you can use for both enemies and your Edgerunners.
That's is a lot
in the box. Yes, the digital set from Drive-Thru RPG actually comes with different stuff in a way. It comes with all of that, but we can't include dice because it's digital. And a token sheet is not going to do much good. We include the full token sheet.
I found this on the web for kinds of different.
No, Siri, I didn't talk to you. The future is now. So we include the token sheet, which you can print out and cut out, but we also include the tokens as individual JPEGs, so that if you want to, play virtually, you can just individual PNGs, transparent PNGs. You can import them and put them on, lay them over a map in your virtual tabletop. There are maps. Each is its own individual JPEG, which you can put into your virtual tabletop game, or on your share your screen with the map on it. And then this is cool. Well, late in the process with the Edgerunner mission kit, we came up with weapon cards and cyberware cards, and we didn't. It was too late to create separate cards to go into the physical box set. So we laid them out they're in the back of the rule book. You can photocopy them or print them out and cut them out for yourself for use at home. But if you have the digital version, those cards will come as individual JPEGs you can import into your VTT. And the digital version will probably have all that too. The digital Roll20 version. And it will probably be on Fantasy Grounds. I'm not sure when, but will be on Fantasy Grounds eventually. The pre-order is starting on the 3rd. And then I'm not sure when Rob plans to end it. And then we will begin shipping the product. It will go live, I believe, on the 21st, if all goes well, knock on wood. And they will, anything you order directly from us physically will go out on the 21st. It'll be available digitally on the 21st on drive-through. Roll20 depends on whether they can do the conversions in time, the programming and coding. And they will already started moving towards distribution and retailers slightly before then. So we hope to see them in stores in North America sometime in July, and the rest of the world whenever international shipping allows.
Wow, so that's right around the corner too, and all of that was for $35, yes?
$35 physical. The digital is less expensive because I think it's going to be $15. I'm not exactly sure off the top of my head, but we always charge less for the digital. And then, yeah. Also, I should say that I know that Hobby Japan in Japan and Need Games in Italy are already working on translating it. So I suspect you'll be finding versions in Polish, in German, in Italian, in Portuguese, in Japanese, in French, as time goes on, and those individual companies that do the localization localize them.
Wow, that's awesome. I can't wait. I'm very, very excited to see the artwork. I have been really loving seeing all of the artwork in all the different books, and especially the ones that, like you were just talking about some of the, region specific ones. I was loving looking at the Japanese versions of Alt and Johnny and kind of looking at some of that artwork. And I really love the cover of the Danger Gal dossier. I was wondering, are you guys ever maybe considering ever doing like an art book, kind of compiling some of those larger pieces?
I know our art director would absolutely love to do that. And we are finally to the point where we have enough art where we can do it. It is literally just a matter of she's managing multiple lines right now. She's managing the art for our art. I should say art director is Winter J. Kovac. That's a long history. He's worked for Wizards of the Coast, worked for White Wolf back in the day. That's working for us now. Has done work for Chaosium. So she's worked on some amazing properties. And right now, Winter J is managing Cyberpunk Red, our new Shadow Scar game, which is by Cody Pondsmith, as well as our upcoming Fossilized Violence game, which is by James Hutt. So she has threatened that whenever she has an hour of free time, she is going to sit down and work out an art book, which we would be happy to put out there because you're right. Winter J's philosophy, I believe, is like every piece should be a cover piece. It should be something we'd be willing to put on a cover of a book. So she's worked really hard on getting the best artists she can. And she, worked with them at every stage, from concept to color studies to, roughs to midsektions to finals to tweaks after finals. Every stage she works with them to make sure that what we get is not just their best, but also matches and fits into our world. Because we have, we have that problem where we'd love to just let the artist go wild because we love it when an artist is creative, but we can't because it also has to look like it belongs to a very specific established world. So there's a balance to be had. And so she threads that balance perfectly of giving the artist enough freedom to make the art as good as it can be, because artists do best when they are given the freedom to be creative and inspired, but also saying, hey, cyber arms just don't look like that in Cyberpunk. And so you're going to have to redo that arm.
Well, she's doing an amazing job because I am really impressed by a lot of the artwork that I'm seeing, and there's so much of it. And as an artist, I'm so appreciative that you guys give artists the credit right next to their image. So rarely is that actually done. So I love to see the artists actually credited and appreciated for their work, especially with, the AI takeover that's happening right now. It's so great to find. Yeah, it's just so great to find a series that just seems to really, really appreciate the artwork and the artist and kind of really put them forward, because there's so much artwork in these books. Like there's artwork like on like every page. It's great.
So I have a confession there. Yes, artists deserve credit. Absolutely. And that's part of why we did it. And we can do it in Cyberpunk where we can't do it in other books, because in a fantasy book, there's not really a place to put in Cyberpunk, for example, if you have never seen our books, what's being talked about here is we have a what's essentially a frame around the art. And then at the edge of the frame, we have a little tab, and the artist's name is on the tab. It's harder to do in a fantasy book, for example, because the frame makes sense in a book that takes place in the future, right? In a fantasy book, a frame like that may not. And so, for example, we don't do that. We haven't done that in our Witcher books. So part of it is that artists deserve to be credited. We want you to be able to look at a book and say, oh, wow, I love that piece of art. I know it's by that artist. I can go find their art station and find more of their art. I can, commission them if they're open for commissions. I can support them through their Patreon or their Ko-fi or whatever other process they have, because artists always could use money. But it's also for selfish reasons. As we have done stuff where we have brought forward, and we did this in the core rulebook in a couple of places. We've done this with our DLCs. We've taken art from the 2020 books and we've brought them forward and reused them. And we want to credit those artists because, in fact, we're contractually obligated to credit those artists when we use their work. But their names are not on that art back in the 2020 books. And so I'll go to Mike or Lisa or Dave Ackerman, who was around during the day. I'll say, do you know who did this piece? And 9 times out of 10, they can tell me. But sometimes they're like, well, that kind of looks like this person, but I don't quite remember. We'll have to dig through all the originals we have in the office and see if there's a signature on it. So the selfish result of all this is that I know that in 10 years from now, if we had to pull a piece of art from a red book and reuse it, I'll know exactly who to credit because the name is right there. It's like sewing your name into your underwear.
Well, it is great to see them in there because the red books are so far the only ones that I have. Actually did get the Chrome books, all 4 of, or I guess the 2 that are packaged, the 1, 2, and 3, 4.
Yes.
And yeah, those don't have the artist. But it's great that the red does, and I absolutely am loving reading these books. And I wanted to ask, do you have recommendations for books for people like me who finish the game and are like, wow, I need to know more about this world and these characters? Do you kind of have maybe a starter's guide to the tabletop source books and where people should go if they are kind of wanting to continue their story from 2077?
Gosh. So if you're specifically coming from 2077 and you want to know more about the role-playing game and the world a little bit more, the first place I would send you, because it's free, is to drive through RPG and look up something called Cyberpunk Red Easy Mode. That's what's called a quick start in RPG terms, and it's basically like a demo. It contains 1 adventure, some basic rules, and a guide to the world, a simple guide to the world. That's a great place to start, and it won't cost you anything. The World of Cyberpunk 2077, which is from Dark Horse, is a great book. You can get it digitally. I saw copies of it in Barnes & Noble the other day when I was there, so you should still get it physically. It is a great guide to Night City, though keep in mind as you read it that was done at the beginning of 2077's release or just before it, and so it does not include, for example, anything about Dogtown or any Phantom Liberty information. If you are looking at our products, that really kind of depends. If you want to know more about Night City in 2020, for example, which is, what the Night City of 2077 is based heavily on, because the Night City of 2045, which is what's in Cyberpunk Red, was developed concurrently with the 2077 Night City. So the 2077 Night City is based more on 2020, as is the Red. That is just, you're looking for a book called Night City, which is available on our website, as well as digitally through DriveThruRPG. Almost everything is digital on DriveThruRPG. If you're not in a hurry, I would suggest waiting and keeping your eyes open.
Oh.
And looking for when we do a Humble Bundle in the future, because I'm hoping we'll do a third one. We've done 2 so far. And I'm hoping we'll do another one. I don't see any reason why we won't. I think it did well. And I think Humble Bundle will come to us again and say, hey, let's do another one. And you'll be able to pick up all the books on the cheap, like for one low price, and you'll get literally everything. Because the truth is, as frustrating as it can be for lore junkies, we put lore into everything. That's kind of, we like to tell stories. We don't like to just write dry, boring stuff. And so we like to tell stories. And so even if it's just a little bit, even if it's just, here's a bunch of rules, and then I had this big empty space in the layout, so we put a quote there. That quote's going to tell a little story. That's a quote from someone in the real world, or in the real cyberpunk world, a real person in that world just saying something, and that's going to tell a little story. So it's all there. The most overall vantage point you're going to find is from the core rulebooks. Cyberpunk Red and Cyberpunk 2020 has the most compact overall information. And then just read the descriptions over at DriveThru on our web store. If it's talking more about, for example, what the United States is like in the Home of the Brave, or the origins of all these characters and factions in Danger God Dossier, those are better books to pick up than, say, Tales of the Red Street Stories, which are adventures and won't really tell you much about the world. There's stuff in there, but it's not as comprehensive because it's built to take you through an adventure as opposed to give you information. I will say, if you are a big 2077 fan and you want to know more about factions from 2077, Danger God Dossier is the next book to get, because it not only tells you stuff about Maelstrom and Tiger Claw back in the day. Both had Maelstrom's more or less the same, but you learn more about them. Tiger Claws actually was very different in 2045. But you also learn about the origins of Sixth Street. Literally will tell you who founded it and why in Danger God Dossier.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know, because that's kind of what I was looking for.
The answer is everything.
Yeah.
I apologize. I kind of, sometimes I do wish we had just one big book of cyberpunk lore we could sell. But the truth is we make role-playing games and we tell stories. And so we have this habit of just telling stories in our role-playing games. And I know that can be maddening sometimes. Another good thing to do is just, randomly browse the wiki, look up characters you like, look up things you like, and then look what their sources are, because the Cyberpunk Wiki online actually does a pretty good job. They've gotten much better over the years at sourcing where information comes from. And you'll be able to say it comes from, this book or this book. And then you can go get that book if that interests you to learn more.
Okay, yeah, well, that's good to know, because there is so many characters that I want to know more about, and the information is just kind of everywhere. Like I was reading, I said I've been reading the Guide to the Net by Raish Bartmas, and there's so many quotes in there from Johnny and Alt, and I was very surprised to see those little tidbits of just information and some history on the characters as well. So yeah, it really does feel like it's everywhere. There's so much.
If you would like to know more about Johnny, there's a book called Rocker Boy. It is one of our earliest books. In fact, I think it's like the second or third book we put out after the original Cyberpunk back in the late 80s. There was an article in there, which is an interview with Carrie Eurodyne. It's Carrie's first big appearance. And it's Carrie talking about what it was like in Samurai and his solo career and Johnny's career. And there's a little more information there. That's probably one of the best sources for information about Johnny. That's more than, hey, Johnny went into a tower and Johnny blew up the tower. It's really good.
I will go run after this and check that out. I'm a huge Johnny Silverhand fan. So yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. And I have one. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're up. That's it. You're welcome. I'm glad I was able to help.
Yeah, thank you. I have one final question, and it's not Cyberpunk related.
Okay.
I saw you were a Mass Effect fan, which obviously Mass Effect is my main content.
I'm gonna say something a little sacrilegious. I played Mass Effect more than I played 2077.
No way. Are you serious?
To be fair, Mass Effect has been out a lot longer.
True.
Yes, I played the heck out of it. I have a dozen run-throughs.
Wow, that's really surprising. That's awesome that it keeps bringing you back. Obviously, I am a hardcore Mass Effect fan too. So I wanted to ask you, because obviously you've played several times, what ending do you choose? Who do you romance? And do you play as femshep or broshep?
Okay, so I've played both. And this is no shade on Mark Muir. He is a good voice actor, and B, I've gotten to meet him in person. He's a lovely guy. But Jennifer Hale is just so good.
Yeah.
Jennifer Hale is just such a good voice actor that I have no choice but to play femshep whenever possible. That is just amazing. I'm sorry, Mark. I'll make it up to you. I'll give you free role-playing game books because I know you love them. Romance-wise, the majority of my playthroughs, it's Liara, because I've warmed up to Caden over the years, but Caden did not interest me at first. He was just so bland, and it's not his fault. In one, you had a choice. It was either, if you're playing femshep, you had Liara or you had Caden, and Liara was just a more interesting choice every time. I have played some run-throughs. I did play a run-through. I've played most of the romances at least once just to see all the scenes. And then once I'm locked in with Liara, I feel like I'm cheating if I pick someone else in 2 or 3. But I have specifically, oh gosh, now I'm forgetting her name. The yeoman in 3, who's a new character.
Kelly?
Kelly's in 2. And 3.
Oh, in 3? Trainer. Samantha Trainer, yeah.
Yeah, so Trainer. I have specifically played where I haven't chosen not to romance anyone so I can romance her, because the whole toothbrush thing.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. And obviously that's the voice actor for Alt, obviously.
Yes, you are correct. And I have done, I've played through most. I think Thane's great. I love Thane. I'm a sucker for a good tragic, young adult romance. The love interest is dead by the end of the book, kind of a storyline. I think the only romance I haven't done fully is Jacob.
Oh,
I'm sorry, Jacob, but it's just the push-ups are weird. But I've done Garrus, I've done Tally, but it's most of my playthroughs were with Liara. As for my ending, I have done every ending to see them. It's to see the color variations, but most endings are synthesis because I can't kill the Geth.
Yeah.
Or Edie.
The Geth are amazing.
I just can't. I work so hard with them. Yeah. And I'm also I make sure Edie and Joker get together. I'm happy for that. But yeah, that's it. I think the more important question is like, what is the renegade option you can't not pick when you're trying to do a full Paragon path?
There's 2 obvious answers, right? I feel like
the guy out the window.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't not because it's such a great line. The point where he gets. Also, for me, it's when you're going. Okay, spoilers if you haven't played this 10-year-old game. when in 2, when you're going to get Archangel and you're talking to the guy near the flying vehicle, and you can stab him in the back with
yeah.
the that's a hard one to resist too.
The way FemShep says it.
Yeah, I know. You deserve to take a break. I have no problem not punching the reporter, honestly. I know a lot of people can't resist that, but I'm like, well, I think in the end, she's honestly just trying her best. And I look at it and I get, why people do clickbait, which is what she's doing, the virtual version of that. I get it, because you're like, I want to succeed. And if I don't do this, I fail and I'll not have a job. And I always feel bad for her. So I empathize. So I don't punch her. Also, I just think punching people who can't fight back is kind of mean. Says the guy who likes to push people out of windows, apparently.
Yeah, I'm actually a pretty pure renegade player. So I do make some sketchy choices throughout the games. I have punched her several times just because I like FemShep's response. I would never do it in real life. Okay, punching journalists is bad.
We're not advocating punching reporters in real life.
Yeah, no.
Though Renegade gets a lot better in 2 and 3. In 1, you're just like, here I'm saying racist stuff, and I'm like, oh my god.
It's shocking sometimes. Yeah, you're like, oh, that didn't match what the text said.
Yeah. I think they learned a lot from 1, and that helped.
Yeah, it's much more fun in 2 and 3.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry. I could talk Mass Effect all day. Mass Effect, I have a list of free properties I'd like to role-playing games for. Mass Effect is right at the top. By the way, there is a Mass Effect board game, if anyone's interested in it, that's coming out from Modiphius, and they make great games. So please check it out.
Yes, I have been promoting that because no one asked me to, but I'm very excited for that. And there's little miniatures that they're going to include with that, and I want those so badly.
It is pretty darn cool. I am looking forward to that. I don't know that I'll even be able to play it because I'm the only Mass Effect fan in my house, but now my son is. Maybe I'll play with him.
Aww.
But I will own it to own it. Yeah, no, he played through he played through the trilogy in one sitting. I mean, obviously he did it over days, but he played straight through for the first time, and which is something I wasn't able to do because I was there when the first game came out. And I was like, how do you feel? It's like, I gotta not do anything for 3 days because I'm overwhelmed with what just happened.
Oh, that's so real. That's pretty much my experience with the Legendary Edition that came out. That was the first time I ever played Mass Effect. And after I finished, I would the ending. So afterwards, I was just like, there's that meme of, that person on the swing from Narcos. And he just kind of, that was me for several weeks after.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It makes us think. And any game that can make you think and ponder and go, oh, but what about and in my case, how would I do that in a game? Really, how would I model that mechanically? Really is good. And so, yes, I know you came here for the Edgerunners, but I hope if you haven't played Mass Effect, 2 people here are recommending it super highly. Go play it. If you liked 2077, I think you'll like it because there's a lot of Mass Effect DNA in 2077.
I will say that after I finished 2077, it just made me think about the future of Mass Effect. And I think about that every second of every day. But it made me think about it more just because all of the AI stuff, especially, is just so fascinating and kind of the future of what the future will look like. It's such an interesting concept. And yes, I did, while I was playing 2077, I just kept thinking about Mass Effect and just how similar there's so many things that I can feel within the games. And yes, play Mass Effect, play 2077 if you have not. And
yes,
the mission kit for Edgerunners, watch Edgerunners if you haven't seen it yet, and get the mission kit when it comes out. Pre-order on the 3rd.
Yes. Yes. Also, if I may, hype something else. I mentioned Shadowscar earlier. That is a new property, new game we're putting out. Signed by Cody Pondsmith, who is worked on Cyberpunk and was the lead designer on the Witcher tabletop role playing game. He is. This is. I sum it down to it's Stargate with ninjas. There's lots of different worlds / dimensions, and you are part of a secret organization that moves between them in a covert fashion to stop evil creatures from causing long-term harm to those worlds. We will have a quick start available on Free RPG Day, which is in July. Can't remember the exact date in July, but it's in July. At your local game store, it will be available digitally sometime after that. And at Gen Con, starting at Gen Con at the beginning of August, we'll have a box set that's similar to the Edgerunners mission kit available for it. So if you like supporting small game companies that are doing independent, non-franchise stuff, this is your chance to support us doing that. So please let us know that you're interested in more than just the big properties, that you're interested in the indie new stuff as well by buying things from us and playing our game.
That's awesome. You guys have so much coming up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I will make
work.
sure.
It's cool. It's nice to have a job.
Yeah, it sounds like you have an awesome job, honestly. I think it's great. And thank you so much for talking to me. I don't know if Rob told you, but this was my first interview ever. So thank you for doing this. And I cannot wait to get my hands on all of these upcoming things. And I'm so excited to see what you guys have coming for the Edgerunners mission kit, especially.
Absolutely. Thank you. And you were great. Thank you for this interview. Your videos are fun. And I was honored to be here.
Well, thank you for watching. And I for sure will be making some lore videos about the upcoming stuff we're going to learn about everyone in the Edgerunners mission kit. Because I need to know about Lucy. I love Lucy. I want to know more about her. So I'm very excited.
I can't spoil anything else. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
You'll have to see.
I will be looking, but okay. Well, thank you so much for doing this. And I will probably be uploading this later today. So we'll get that pre-order information out there, and I'm going to go pre-order it myself right now.
Cool deal.
All right. Thank you so much, Jay. Thank you for watching my interview with Jay Gray. I was a little bit nervous, but this was really fun, and I hope to do many more of these in the future. I'll put all the links below if you want to pre-order the Edgerunners mission kit and check out the Cyberpunk sourcebooks through the Artel Saurian website. Again, thank you for watching, and see you next time.